Hey, I'm Fraser. I'm new faculty in ISR, and I'm interested in automated approaches to program correctness. That means building tools that answer questions like, how do we figure out when programs are doing the wrong thing? Or how do we prove that programs are actually doing the right thing? I'm interested in a whole range of approaches from light to heavyweight. For example, I occasionally use fuzzers or tools that automatically test programs on sort of randomly generated inputs. Nowadays, fuzzers generate inputs a lot more cleverly than in this example. I'll also use static checking, automatically identifying rule violations or buggy patterns in source code. Checkers can find simple bugs like a null check of P followed by a dereference of P. Either the check is redundant or the dereference could hard crash. I've also used symbolic execution, where you reason about programs by turning them into logical formulas. And finally, I'm focused a lot these days on automated verification. You still translate programs into formulas and then use those formulas to prove that bad things can never happen in the programs. So now that we've talked about some bug finding and verification techniques, where do we actually apply them? There are all sorts of bugs in the world, and some of them are, maybe a little less important or more important than others, right? So I tend to focus on finding and preventing security bugs, the sorts of errors that let attackers remotely compromise victim machines, say. Recently, this has meant focusing on compiler correctness. Here are a few examples, but we're just going to dive a bit deeper into one: JavaScript engines in web browsers and what makes them so terrifying. Browser JITs are what compile and execute the JavaScript on every web page you visit. And this means that the JIT's attacker model is quite different from the standard, most common attacker model for compilers. For example, in the traditional model, say you want to compile the kernel, and you're going to do that using GCC. Since you trust the kernel to be your operating system, you certainly trust it not to exploit GCC bugs in order to own your machine. In contrast, you definitely don't trust the JavaScript on the internet. And this is the code that gets compiled by your browser JIT. And it can try and take advantage of bugs in that JIT in order to own your machine, right? It's pretty simple to actually do this too. The first step is to find a JIT bug, and even though they're subtle and a bit tricky to find, there are plenty of them out there. And once you've got your JIT bug, the next step is to write a piece of JavaScript code that uses the JIT bug to break out of the browser sandbox. The final step is to embed that JavaScript code onto some web page. When people visit the web page, the JavaScript runs and performs the attack, using some combination of a JIT bug to escape from the browser and maybe some kernel bug to get root on a victim computer. And this actually happens in the real world. As just one silly example, in May of 2019, employees of Coinbase were targeted with a phishing campaign that sent them to a web page exploiting a JIT bug. Yikes. And that's been happening like much, much, much more recently. This is sort of the main browser attack vector right now. So it would be great if we could just verify that the whole JIT is right? That it always does what it should. That's pretty hard though, because the JIT is massive, millions of lines of code, and because correctness means different things in different pieces of the JIT. And correctness can be really, really, really hard to specify. So this is a problem we've been thinking about a lot with people from a bunch of different institutions. And we've been asking, how can we retrofit guarantees onto the existing JIT and other compilers with minimal effort? So this isn't exactly right, but we've been thinking about better testing tools. We've also been thinking about verifying small pieces of existing code where the correctness property is really clear. And finally, even building new domain-specific languages for compiler construction that are really easily verified. If you're interested in any of this, compilers, program analysis, verification tools, or even building browser attacks, please get in touch. I'd love to talk. Thank you.